Hey everyone, welcome to the Unhandled Exception podcast. I'm Dan Clark and this is episode number 20. So we are no longer a teenager, although it does actually feel like a lot more than 20 episodes since the podcast started last year. But I've really enjoyed geeking out with all the awesome guests so far, and I'm fairly sure that today is going to be no exception, because with me today is Mr. Mark Rendle. So welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
You're more than welcome. And I should probably introduce you on properly. So Mark is a C# dev, Microsoft MVP, author of Visual Recode, and frequent public speaker. And you've actually even done a talk at .NET Oxford. I think that was last year on writing code that writes code, I think it was.
Oh, yes, that's a fun one. That was about a year ago.
I know, it feels... time just feels...
Yes, it's still March 2020.
But no, you're a streamer as well, which is actually what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes.
You host a Twitch stream where you do live coding.
Yes.
Before we get into that, is there anything else I've missed off your intro that you'd like to mention?
Oh, I wrote a book. Wrote the book on...
I didn't know this, actually.
gRPC for WCF developers for Microsoft, which is on Microsoft's architecture docs site. Wrote that with my wife. And yeah, and then I think that's it. Sort of just general geek and massive show off.
In the last episode, I was chatting with Chris Sainty about Blazor, and then we were talking a bit about his book, and he was talking about all the work that goes into actually authoring a book.
It is a lot of work, and writing a book with WCF in the title when you've got one of the lead developers of WCF as a reviewer is yeah, it's interesting.
Does this all tie into your Visual Recode project?
Yeah, basically when Microsoft sort of announced that WCF was being discontinued and that they recommended gRPC, I jumped on that. I was all over it and started working on Visual Recode, started blogging about it a lot. And they just got in touch and went, hey, we'd really like a book for sort of explaining gRPC in the frame of reference of WCF. Do you want to write it? And I was kind of like, I can't write that. But then my wife went, I'll help you do the technical bits and I'll turn it into a book, because she's sort of a very good writer and she's doing like an MBA in creative writing at the moment. And so
nice.
she took my just stream of consciousness, tech fact, and actually turned it into a readable book, which was nice.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because I mentioned before I was talking to Chris Sainty in the last episode, and we actually spoke a lot more after we finished recording about authoring and books. And then this morning I was chatting to someone else and they were saying that they've been thinking about writing a book. And I've actually been thinking about writing a book for quite a while too. So this morning we were talking about it. So it's funny that it's come up again in this conversation. It seems to be the theme at the moment.
I think everyone should write a book, or at least everyone should try writing a book at least once. I've got books that I wish I had time to write. And yeah, one day I will actually go, right, going to sit down and do it. But yes, it's nice to have a book out there. And particularly to be able to say it's on Microsoft's website and you can download a PDF or a Mobi, I think, and you can sort of put it on your device. But it's free. And yeah, so it's kind of accessible.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll go and have a ganders myself a bit later.
Yeah, cool.
So before we delve properly into streaming, I'm going to do this episode's listener mention. So this one goes to Mike Brind. And he said, great episode. I'm becoming addicted to these since I found them at the weekend. So he's referring to the last episode with Chris Sainty that I just mentioned about Blazor. And this actually means such a lot to hear that he's finding the podcast addictive. That's like, comments like that make all the work really worthwhile.
Yeah, that's nice. It's nice when you put something out there and you get positive response.
Absolutely, especially if it's on the internet.
Yeah.
So streaming. So you've recently started a Twitch stream.
Yes.
I was looking through the videos. Obviously, you can attend live and get involved or watch them after the fact. And you can see you've got a lot of ones on the School of Grok.
Yes. Yeah, School of Grok. Time is difficult. I think it was 4 years ago. I'd been doing a lot of workshops and consulting work and that sort of thing. And it's great, but it doesn't scale because it's just you doing it. And so I had the idea to do a video, sort of make videos and sell them. And School of Grok was the brand name I thought of for that, which I was really pleased with. But then when I actually tried to sit down and make videos, it's really difficult. And so I never actually got to the point where I had completed a course in something, because when you're recording videos, you make a mistake and you go, and then you sort of go, right, where's an edit point that I can go back to and just restart that whole bit. And then the editing process, as you probably know from doing a podcast, is just a nightmare.
I must admit, I find when I've tried to edit videos, I find that a nightmare. I find editing audio only, because you don't have the glitch in the actual video.
Yeah.
Then it's just, you can edit it and you just can't tell. It's quite...
Yes, yeah. When you've got video and you've got to kind of undo what you were doing on the screen and stuff. And then I got to the point where I was recording, doing the screen grab bit, and then going back and recording the audio over that. And then you kind of go, right, so I need to stretch this frame to account for the fact that I talked for an extra so it was just super complicated. And so that project got mothballed. And then I started working on Visual Recode. So I didn't really have time to do anything else. And so then when I started streaming, I kind of resurrected the School of Grok name.
I quite like some of your older School of Grok videos that it was using like School of Tea that kind of syntax.
Yes, yeah. Actually, the only reason I've changed it is that it's something like when Twitter pulls the title through on the meta card for Twitter, it doesn't like the angle bracket, and
Gotcha.
So it just cuts it off to school. And you're just kind of like, yeah, no one's going to watch that. And so I changed it to. But yes, the branding for it, if I ever make stickers, it'll be School of Tea kind of grok.
I just got a flashback of have you seen the mugs, the cup of tea?
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of where I got that from. Yes, it's not original, but I do like it. But yes, yeah, making videos and editing them and making them professional. And it's, even just stuff, when it's just you talking, you get the mouth noises and you have to go through, and you're kind of going through and taking out all those noises, which you're now going to have to leave in on this. So yeah, and that's the thing about streaming, is when you're doing it live, that's it. It's out there. You can't go, oh no, I'm going to go back and delete because people are watching and it's live. And so you get away with a lot more. And so the idea is to do these live and then do a bit of light editing and then upload them to YouTube and make it a series on YouTube. But it's a lot more relaxed and informal streaming. But yeah, I'm so busy and I got so many things going on, and day job and Recode and family, work-life balance and all that sort of thing, that I wasn't getting any time to work on just speculative projects or learning things or whatever. And in a way, streaming gives you permission to do that. So I can kind of go, I've got an idea for a thing and I'm just going to hack at it. And if I do it while I'm streaming, then it's sort of being productive or something.
It's quite a nice side effect, isn't it, that you're learning whilst producing something?
Yes, yeah. And it forces you to kind of, if you ever sort of read any of these, how to get things done, how to be productive and whatever, they always say, actually set times in your schedule for doing things. And I've tried doing that. And I've tried going, right, at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, I am going to spend 4 hours working on this. But when it's just me, it gets to 10 o'clock on Saturday morning and I go, well, I'll do it in half an hour.
I thought you were going to say at 10 o'clock, the kids give another plan to your day.
Well, that happens as well.
That's what I get. I can't map out the day with kids.
Yeah. When it's streaming, if you say you're going to be there at 8 o'clock for an hour and then you're not there at 8 o'clock, you're letting people down. And that just gives you that extra push to actually sort of get on and do the thing that you said you were going to do. So that works really well as well. And yeah, there's just that excuse to work on something different because, my day job at the moment, I'm doing a lot of back-end services, which, part of the reason they pay me lots of money is that I know what I'm doing and I'm pretty good at it. So I'm not learning anything new there. Visual Recode, I learn lots of new things, but they tend to be about the Visual Studio Extension SDK or WPF, which are not really things that I want to be expanding my knowledge on. It's kind of, I really wish they'd just rewrite Visual Studio completely in .NET 6 and Blazor. I just don't think it's going to happen. So yeah, streaming is a kind of excuse to go, I'm going to learn Blazor. I'm going to learn .NET MAUI, which I've been doing lately, and kind of dig into these things. It's fantastic. And it's great. And it's one of those things, I think everybody could do it. That's kind of the reason why I suggested we talk about it today, is that I don't think really anything that I've done up to this point, because it's not using the same set of skills that I use for doing user group talks or, presentations or workshops at big conferences, because the main thing you need to be able to do is sort of just stream of consciousness talk about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do have trouble actually verbalizing their stream of consciousness, though. It's kind of, since last year, I've been obviously working remotely, and I probably will do for some time now. But there's been a lot of pair programming in that. And I found when doing pair programming, you are verbalizing as you're working and saying what you're thinking. And I found that has made a massive difference to things like doing the podcast or doing talks, because I've spent all day articulating as I'm doing it, which is kind of presumably what you do in the stream.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people, if they're used to sitting down with a headphone just coding away, aren't used to actually articulating that out loud as they do it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really useful skill for everybody to develop. Partly, as you say, when you're pair programming, the point of pair programming is not that you both sit in silence and somebody watches the other one do it. It's that you talk about what you're doing and you're in a conversation and working at the same time. And yeah, Twitch is like pair programming, but with 20 people sort of watching and telling you where you've gone wrong in the chat. And yeah, you blather away while you're coding, and it doesn't matter if you stop coding for 5 minutes and just go off on a complete tangent and people are asking you questions. When I started, I had an idea for Cocoon, which is a sort of proxy that goes in front of a web forms application so you can replace it a page at a time, which was quite high level stuff. And then I ended up learning Blazor, which I hadn't touched before, and I made a deliberate choice when I was doing that stuff not to learn anything about something before I started doing it on the stream, because I thought for other people to watch me learn something might be useful. But I was getting people watching the stream and just going, I don't know any C# at all. Could you do some streams where you actually teach C#? And I got enough people asking that I thought, okay. So, and I've had to kind of try and work it out, because if I go say to my wife, I'm streaming every night for 2 hours, then she's going to just say, no, you're not. But I've switched it so that the evening streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays are now properly School of Grok, learn C# with me. And I sort of explain stuff. And so we're kind of going, we've got strings and ints and decimals and nullables and methods and classes and all that sort of thing. And yeah, that's quite interesting, going back to that level of assuming no knowledge at all. And I'm getting lots of younger people are joining the stream. I know some of my eldest child's friends are watching and they want to do game programming, and they're sort of looking at Unreal Engine, and I'm telling them, no, use Unity and C#. So they started watching my streams to learn C#.
That's brilliant. Because I know, obviously, a lot of kids are kind of not embarrassed about the parents, but they don't want to. I don't want to be dropped off at school or whatever it is. And mine aren't at that age yet, but I'm presuming it's going to come at some point. But that's fantastic that your kids' friends are actually getting involved in something you're producing.
Yes, yeah. I am. What kind of parent am I? I'm not strict. My kids are not. It's my parents were really just ridiculously strict, and everything was wrong. And so I've kind of pushed back the other way. And so yeah, my kids have it pretty good. And so their friends kind of meet me when I come to pick her up, and yeah, then I get sort of reports back going, my friends all think you're really cool.
Nice.
They're obviously idiots. But yeah, so they come and watch my stream and ask questions and things. So that's fun. And again, I'm going to sort of lightly edit those and put it onto YouTube as a Learn C# with Mark School of Grok thing. And then I'm switching the ones where it's me mucking about with sort of new stuff to lunchtime streams so that people can just kind of drop in while they're eating their sandwich. And assuming if they're in the office, their office network hasn't blocked Twitch, which, maybe it does.
That was one of the things I was going to ask. How do you actually pick the best times where people are most available? So you just kind of mentioned about lunchtime things so people can drop in. Have you played around with different schedules?
When I started, it was 7:00 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I was aiming for 2 hours. And I would get people would be there at the start and then drop out halfway through because they had to go and do bedtime and bath time and things like that. Because obviously, people my age, 30s and 40s, have got responsibilities. But that's kind of okay, sort of dropping in and out and so on. Obviously, I can't be doing it at 9:00 in the morning or 3:00 in the afternoon because the people who are paying me would be going, why are we paying you for, So yeah, there is some mucking about. I think lunchtimes is going to work quite well, certainly for the European audience. Then the learning ones, I've switched to 8:00 in the evening when I think younger people are probably free. I think it's sort of after tea time for people who have structured lives, which I don't. And it's only for an hour because more than an hour trying to learn something, there's a reason why school lessons are 45 minutes, because if you go for longer than that, then your brain just shuts down and goes, nope, that's it, new information. And everything gets archived. There's a really, really nice button inside Twitch where you just go export and it sends it to your YouTube channel. And so people who miss an episode can just catch up on it there.
And I think you can just, in Twitch, view the videos there, because that's when I look back at your past videos in the School of Grok, I could see there was just like the list of, very like YouTube really, it was just a list of your past videos.
Yeah, they only go back 60 days, that's the issue.
Oh, I see, right, okay.
So Twitch has this thing, when you start streaming, there is a thing called the affiliate program, and they have a series of targets that you have to reach to become an affiliate. And you have to have, I think it's 50 followers, and you have to stream for a minimum of 8 hours in a single month. It's all really, really achievable for most people. You have to reach a number of people chatting at the same time in your stream, which I think is only 5 or something. And when you get to affiliate, so before you're an affiliate, I think the videos are kept for 14 days. And then when you become an affiliate, they're kept for 60 days. But then you can export them over to YouTube where they just stay forever.
Gotcha. So you've probably done a lot more videos than I thought you had done, because I was just looking on your Twitch.
Yeah, no, it goes back to pretty much the start of the year, I think. I started doing it in January. So all the ones on Cocoon, which was the first ones I did, they're all on YouTube. And I need to kind of do some editing on YouTube and then group them into playlists and stuff. And then, yeah, the stuff that I'm doing now in the not learning ones, I'm actually making a tool for streamers to use on their stream, which started out as just, I'm going to muck about with this and it'll be quite fun, but it's actually turned into, it has a website now, it has a proper name, Stream Badger.
I've seen these on your Twitter stream.
Yes, and that's great because I'm building it on the stream, and then when I hit F5 and start debugging it on the stream, it becomes active actually on the stream. And so when I'm clicking the button to make Perry the Platypus go flying across the screen, it actually happens.
So is this like an OBS extension or something?
Yeah. So it runs outside. So it's a standalone program, and it's super complicated because, of course, it is. Because why would you build something simple? It started out as just a Blazor application that ran in the browser. But inside OBS, one of the sources you can have in your stream is a browser source. So I create a browser source inside OBS and point it at this Blazor application. And then I also had another page on that application open in the browser. And then I would click things in the browser application and they would show up in the overlay in OBS. Then people were saying, oh, we should make this a standalone application, and started talking about Electron.net, and there was something else, Photon, I think it was called, or Proton, but that had some issues. So now it has switched over to using Blazor Desktop, which I started doing with .NET 6 Preview 4, which was really quite hairy. And currently it's on Preview 5. Over the weekend, I'm going to upgrade it to Preview 6, because honestly, upgrading from 5 to 6 is not something worthy of streaming. It's just a pain in the arse and moving a bunch of files around. But yeah, so at some point, once .NET 6 has a kind of go live license, whatever they call those things, when you get to like Preview 8 or 9, they start saying, we'll support this in production. And then I will actually start packaging it and shipping it for Windows and Mac, which I'm quite looking forward to, and getting some branding on it and that sort of thing. So you've got a .NET MAUI Blazor desktop application, which is running one Blazor server app. And then you also, in the same process, have a completely separate Blazor server application, which is running on a TCP port, so on localhost 25293. And the OBS overlay is pointing to the Blazor server running on localhost, but the application is running all inside the Blazor desktop web view thing, which is just mental. But it seems to work.
That sounds pretty cool. For the listeners, if none of that made sense, go listen to the last episode on Blazor. So don't we talk about like Blazor server and all this kind of stuff?
Yes, yeah. And the nice thing about it is the first experience I had with Blazor, and this is one of the privileges of having been sort of doing the public speaking circuit for 10, 11 years now, and doing a lot of the developer events in the UK. Steve Sanderson obviously is UK based and was a presence at a lot of the DDD events. And so I met him there and he watched my talks and I watched his talks and we follow each other on Twitter. And so when I was working on Cocoon, people were saying, could you get this to work with Blazor? And I was kind of like, I don't know, we'll try that on the next stream. And so then on Twitter, I went, so I'm going to try Blazor and see if we can get Cocoon working with Blazor. I've never touched Blazor before, come and see me flail. And one of the people who came to see me flail was Steve Sanderson.
That's pretty impressive, getting Steve on the stream.
Yes, it was scary because, you know, I don't want to make myself look like an idiot in front of Steve, but he was just super helpful. And actually, he said the reason he was there was he doesn't get an opportunity to see people's first experience with Blazor.
Gotcha.
As a software developer, that ability to watch someone try and use your thing for the first time, you never get to see that. And so you don't really understand how people are interacting with it. And so he was watching me and trying not to give me too much help. But also, if I did get completely stuck, he would go, right, so press Control, Shift, Alt, and whatever it was to bring up the debug window, which he can then take away and think, I need to make that more obvious. But also just to sit there and go, why doesn't Mark read docs? We've put that in the documentation. Why is he just trying to figure it out? But once I started playing with Blazor, I was just super impressed with it. I had been skeptical. I was a Blazor skeptic. I thought, why are we trying to make the browser do something it doesn't want to do? Why would you do this instead of just using JavaScript? And Blazor WebAssembly, I think, has still got a long way to go. It's got a lot better with .NET 6 and the ahead-of-time compilation, and I think it will, over time, become really super compelling. But Blazor Server, actually on the Learn C# thing next week, I was trying to go, what's the next logical step after a console application? So having written a console calculator, what's the logical next step? And as a .NET developer, you might go, well, Blazor's really new and therefore advanced, and it would be terrifying. But actually, I'm going to jump straight to Blazor Server to write a chat application because it's easier to do it using Blazor Server. You don't have to worry about JavaScript, so you're not kind of dragging in another language, and you're not worrying about APIs and JSON serialization and all this sort of stuff. It's a really nice model. Outside of the .NET ecosystem, Basecamp have come up with this thing called Hotwire. And Hotwire is HTML over the wire. And it's basically doing the same thing as Blazor. It's running a process on the back end, sending the DOM updates over WebSockets so that you have this minimal thing. And this is like the new hotness. And I think there are a couple of other frameworks that are doing similar things. And I think Meteor was doing something similar. And yeah, I was kind of like reading articles about Hotwire, and people were going, this is amazing. This is the future. This is fantastic. And I'm just going, this is Blazor. This is Blazor Server. It is. It's super simple. And for people who have web forms applications, in one way, they are not at all similar. There's no ASPX, there's no view state, there's a completely different page lifecycle. But in other ways, it's almost exactly the same. When you have an event in Blazor, that event gets sent over the WebSocket and processed on the server, and then the server sends back the DOM updates. But it's doing it with tiny, tiny little bits of packets of data being sent backwards and forwards over this WebSocket. It's just a really intuitive way of building applications. And it's so intuitive that Blazor Desktop, to me, makes perfect sense. It's kind of going, as a developer, you're probably, in your life, you're going to spend time building web applications, but you also want to build desktop applications. And why not use the same thing for both of them? And the Blazor Desktop, that is using the Blazor Server model. So you have a .NET runtime and then a web view, which are connected via a WebSocket, which is running over memory effectively. And so the performance is insane. And that's a really nice model. And it means that people only have to learn one technology to be able to build web applications and desktop applications and mobile applications. You can use what they're calling Maui-Blazor is the .NET template for it, and it includes iOS, Android, Mac Catalyst, and WinUI. And you can build for all of those targets.
I think that's the thing that excites me about all the new stuff, like .NET Maui, Blazor, across all the things. I believe the Blazor Mobile is experimental, so it's not confirmed yet, but the Blazor Desktop is meant to be coming in .NET 6, I believe.
Blazor Desktop is penned in for .NET 6. So it's weird because it's in preview. I think all the experimental bits are turned on. You currently can't create a Maui Blazor application that doesn't target iOS and Android. I'm hoping that it becomes possible to specify which targets you want as part of the new process. But yeah, they haven't guaranteed it for iOS and Android as part of the .NET 6 final release. But yeah, if I wasn't doing the streaming, I would have no opportunity to learn Blazor. It's very difficult to go to a client and say, particularly when you're freelance, you're kind of a coder for hire, you don't get to choose architectures and technologies and that sort of thing in the same way. So you can't go to your client and go, I'm going to build this using Blazor Server, because they just go, no, you're not. You're going to build it using these things and this very expensive component library that we pay enormous amounts of money for and all that sort of thing. So yeah, streaming gives me an opportunity to learn things myself, which is really nice. And learning in the open. I struggle with how to best put this, but I am aware that I have a reputation. Because of the talks that I do.
Is this safe for kids?
Yeah. Oh no. No. I would like to say actually to the people who might be wondering, the streams are absolutely safe for work. I do not. I bleep myself. But no, I have a reputation as being knowledgeable, clever. I do wacky, interesting, advanced things with code. The first talk I ever did at DDD events was called Functional Alchemy. And I was doing it at the main DDD conference at the Microsoft campus in Reading. And John Skeet was in the audience.
You're getting good audiences with these things.
Oh, I do. I've been incredibly lucky. But yes, when you're there going, here's some really clever stuff you can do with C#.
And John Skeet's in the audience.
And John Skeet's in the audience, and you're just kind of going, right, we're going to find out whether this is as clever as I thought it was. And bless him, he managed to last about 15 minutes before he joined in. But in a very joiny in kind of way. It wasn't going, no, that's wrong. He was going, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. And he said, do you want to, you could extend that to do this. Do you want to pair on it after you've finished? And I'm just going, I'm going to pair with John Skeet. But no, I have this reputation as being this kind of one of the better people in .NET and C#, and I wrote simple data, which had some really hairy code in it. And I think it's really good when you've got that kind of reputation to just put yourself out there and go, actually, I'm an idiot. I make mistakes. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to learn these things as well, to just kind of deliberately knock off some of that sheen that you have as a speaker. And yeah, just put yourself on the internet being dense and useless and not knowing anything.
Going back to what you were saying before about you intentionally didn't learn Blazor beforehand or look into it until you were on the stream, that is such a good thing. I can picture a lot of people that wanted to get into streaming thinking, I can't embarrass myself, so I'm going to study this beforehand.
Yeah.
And then it's really good that you've not done that and not cared about people seeing you learn, because everyone's got to learn. If you pick up a new technology, you're not going to pick it up straight away. There's going to be learning curves.
Yes.
And I think that's just brilliant to be able to do that.
Yeah, because if I went off and learned everything I needed to learn to do an episode, then that's the same as doing a conference talk or a user group talk. And a lot of the time I will say, I want to learn lots and lots about that subject. And so I'll put it as an abstract for conferences 6 months or 9 months out. And then if one of them accepts it, I'm kind of like, right, I've got to learn that. And I learn everything and dig really deep into it and become not an expert, but proficient enough that I can do a 1 hour talk on it. And I wanted streaming to be different from that. I wanted it to be, let's learn together. If I go through the process of learning and making mistakes, then the people who are watching are also going through that process and they can see the mistakes. And then when they come to do it themselves, they can go, oh, I remember Mark messed that up and he had to go back and do this and whatever else. And I think that makes it much more useful and approachable.
Absolutely. I think not just the mistakes, but if something doesn't work and the investigations and debugging and kind of just doing that together. And
yeah. And I've actually had feedback. It was interesting. Some of the feedback was, I wish you'd learn these things before you show them on the stream. But actually much more of the feedback was, it's really fun watching you sort of, people have learned things about debugging or things about logging or things about, even things about Googling from watching me on the stream. If I Google something, I drag the browser window down onto the stream so that people can see what I'm Googling and clicking about. And, and also a lot of the time the answer's coming from blog posts. And if that's the case, I want people to be able to see the blog post and the URL and the person who wrote it and that sort of thing so that they get the credit. And the fact that doing it this way is also much less effort is just a bonus, not having to prep for these things particularly. I wouldn't necessarily be as happy doing it if I had to do all the prep.
I don't know whether you remember this, but when you did the .NET Oxford talk, I think it was last year, beforehand we were having a conversation and you were saying, I think you said you had got another screen below where you could see the Zoom matrix of people because
yes,
you like to see people's expressions and things as you're doing the talk. But presumably you don't get to see any of that on Twitch and it's just people typing.
You don't get that with Twitch. It would be really nice, actually, if you did get that with Twitch, if there was a way of doing that. I've wondered about having a Zoom meeting running at the same time, but public Zoom meetings, you just get people bombing them and things. So I haven't done that. But no, do you have the chat window? And for me, that was one thing too many to focus on, actually. So I could talk and I could watch what I was doing, but I found essentially an IRC application, because Twitch chat is accessible as an IRC channel.
IRC. Sorry to derail this slightly, but I recently discovered that, remember MIRC?
Yes.
If you go to their website, there's updates like a few days ago, as in literally they're still building MIRC. I can't believe it.
Yeah, no, they are. IRC is still totally a thing. You see lots of projects these days there's a Discord server and there's an IRC channel. But there's this app Chatty that I got, which is an IRC thing that connects to your Twitch chat, and it pops up notifications. And so I've got that set to bring up the notification on the screen that I'm streaming, so that when somebody says something, I do actually notice. Because that's one of the things that you have to be able to do as a streamer. And if you watch the couple of .NET streamers that I watch to try and pick up tips from, there's Jeff Fritz, C# Fritz, who was building this thing ClipTalk, and he's very, very good. So I watch him, and also Layla codes it.
Layla Porter,
yes. She's got the most amazing stream. She has this whole kind of 3D virtual environment that somebody created for her, and she has there's a tombola thing that runs on the screen and a number pops out, and then somebody gets a free JetBrains subscription for 6 months, and it's sponsored. But the thing that both of them are really good at is connecting with the people who are talking in the chat and responding back to them and so forth. And so I'm still learning with that, but I have some people who regularly drop in, so I'm kind of chatting to them and they join in. There are people who lurk and don't like to chat, and that's fine. But sometimes there have been a couple of streams where I've gone through the whole thing and I can see that there are a dozen people there and none of them are talking, and you're just going, shout out in the chat if you've got any questions, and trying to get people to engage. But yeah, it's the only feedback you're getting to say whether you're doing well or not doing well. So it's nice when people do join in and chat. And it's still very early days, and I'm not particularly putting in an enormous amount of effort to promote the channel. A lot of people are kind of chasing followers and chasing subscribers and all that sort of thing. I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing it because it gives me an excuse to do some hacking things and stuff.
I think the people that just do it for money, it probably shows. It's like, for example, this podcast we're doing now, there's no money coming in for it or anything. It's because I love it. And people that do talks, that you're speaking yourself, so you know this, but the amount of effort that goes into preparing a talk is a lot more than what people probably think.
Yeah.
But all that's free. It's kind of, and time isn't free.
Yes. And yeah, if you're doing something because it's fun, or because it's giving you an excuse to play with things that you wouldn't have a chance to play with otherwise, or whatever, I've got no illusions that I'm going to be a YouTuber with millions of subscribers. That's just not going to happen.
Oh, you're selling yourself short there.
Well, I'm just not excitable enough to be a YouTuber. I actually watch YouTube and it's kind of like, wow. But yeah, if I do a stream and I get 10 people watching it, then at the end of that, I'm super happy. I'm made up with that.
Have you ever started the stream and no one's joined?
I've had some where just nobody's there for the first 5 minutes.
And do you just wait, or do you start, or what?
I just kind of blather on. The first person turns up, and that's it. You're going. You've got one person watching, and you need to be talking, and you need to be engaging them, and you just sort of trust that people will turn up. I try not to count the number of viewers that are in the channel, but yeah, and I've done streams where there were like 3 or 4 people all the way through, and then I've done streams. I think the most I've had concurrently was 45. So there's a thing on Twitch called raiding. So when somebody finishes their stream, they raid your channel and they bring all their viewers with them and just dump them into your channel. And I got raided by somebody with about 35 viewers, and quite a lot of them hung around. Some of them obviously just vanished straight away, but quite a lot of them hung around, and I got quite a few follows. And yeah, and the really nice, like I say, I had Steve Sanderson drop in when I said I was going to learn Blazor. And then there was another one. There's a new cloud hosting platform called Railway.
I've not heard of that.
It's like Heroku, but it's just sort of starting up. It's still quite early days for it. And you get 3 instances of whatever for free. And each of those instances can have a Redis database or a Postgres database or a Mongo database or a something else I can't remember. And for Stream Badger, I needed something to do a login process, because once I turned it into a desktop application, you can't show the Twitch OAuth flow inside a desktop application. I mean, you can, but if you are using a desktop application and someone shows you the Twitch screen, you have no way of knowing whether that's actually the Twitch screen or whether I've just copied and pasted the HTML and I'm stealing your password. So I wanted one of those external flows where it opens a page in the browser and you log in the browser and then it goes back to the application. So I needed a website for that. So I, on Twitter, went, gonna take a look at Railway. And I had a dude from Railway turned up and watched the stream and was kind of sitting there going, oh yeah, that need to do this. And I got completely stuck. The NPM package that you install for the command line doesn't work very well on Windows. So the guy's in the stream and he's going, do you have WSL? Try using WSL. So I switched over to WSL and did the NPM install. And that didn't work for some reason to do with NPM. And then he went and he pasted the command to download a shell script from the internet and run it with sudo permissions. He pasted that into the chat. And so I copied and pasted a sudo command from my Twitch chat onto my main work computer and ran it.
Did you look at the script before you ran it?
It did have https://railway something. So I was kind of like, yeah, pretty sure that's all right. But yeah, getting those people dropping in is really nice as well. And I'm at the point now, I've got 259 followers after 6 months. And if you have Amazon Prime, then you get a free subscription to use. And on Twitch, a subscription lasts for a month, and then you have to renew it. And subscribing to my channel doesn't give you extra privileges. There's nothing you can do if you're subscribed that you can't do if you're not subscribed. But there are people who just go, well, I've got this free Prime subscription to do something with. You can have it, which is really nice. So actually, I think in total, I've made $10 so far from Twitch streaming. But yeah, it's just nice. It's nice to sort of be building this little community, and there's this Discord server, and particularly picking up these younger people who are looking to get into software development. And at school, they may be learning Python if they're doing GCSE, or maybe learning kind of Java or C++ if they're doing A-level. And so they can sort of drop by and learn some C# in a kind of informal, fun environment. So it's nice to be kind of doing that kind of outreach stuff as well.
I think that's nice, getting younger people into .NET.
Yeah.
Historically, obviously, .NET full framework has been very enterprisey, but now it's obviously open source cross-platform. It runs everywhere. But where we live and breathe .NET, we know that.
Yes.
But a lot of people in their minds, .NET is still the old enterprisey Microsoft Windows only. And just to get that education, especially at the very start when people are just coming out of school. Yes.
And my first episode of the Hey, Learn C# thing, I talked about all the things you can do with C#. Because I think a lot of people don't know, but you've got ASP.NET Core, you can build websites and web applications. Like I say, next Tuesday, we're going to start building a Blazor server chat application, which, it means young people. And I'm going to show people how to get it hosted on Railway, and you get your free instance on Railway. So they can actually put a chat application up just for themselves and their friends. And I think that's going to be really, the younger viewers are going to go for that. But I've got a game on the Apple App Store and on the Google Play Store that I built with Unity using C#. And at some point in the future, I will do, hey, let's build a game with Unity. there's all these things you can do. I honestly struggle to think of another language, even including JavaScript, that is as versatile right now as C#. Unity, Xamarin, Maui, ASP.NET Core. It's just, you can do anything. The only thing that you really can't do with it, with pure C#, is systems, really low-level systems programming, the kind of thing where the only options really are C or Rust. And yeah, that's fine. If you want to learn those things and do that kind of programming, you probably need to go to university and do a computer science degree anyway. But for everything else, I honestly believe that C#, I've been programming for 30 years, and it's my favorite language out of all the ones I've ever used. And, people go, what's your least favorite thing about C#? I struggle to think of that. And so if I can introduce people to that and have younger people who are sort of just at the start of their careers and looking to get into programming, and have them go, hey, this .NET C# thing, and not view it as this big, boring enterprise WCF, all that sort of stuff, then yeah, I think that's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that games are so performant as well, because the first half of my career was actually in the games industry, and I was writing games engine technology, and it was quite low level in C and C++. But I suppose this was more the engine, where if you're using something like Unity, it's done for you. But a lot of the performance stuff really having to chase like cache misses and all this kind of thing and get low level. And obviously .NET is managed, but I'm assuming Unity is just abstracting a lot of that performance away from you so you can just focus on your game.
Yeah, so Unity has an IL to CPP compiler, which kind of takes your code through C++ and applies a bunch of optimizations. But they also do very interesting things themselves. So it's the runtime that they're using is a mono variant, but they've forked mono and they've been doing insane things to that. But they've also got the boost compiler now, where if you write code with a sort of fairly restrictive set of constraints and mark code with various attributes, it goes through this boost compiler, which is optimized to create data structures that avoid cache misses. And you can write massively parallel code in Unity that will take advantage of all 16 cores or all 32 cores and try and keep as much state as possible in your 32 megabytes of level 3 cache. Yeah, there's deep magic going on there. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a C# application, and I'm editing it in JetBrains Rider, and everything I know from my years of experience with C# is pretty much still valid.
Do you still have things like vertex shaders and pixel shaders? It's been such a long time since I've even looked at this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's got shader language, and you can write HLSL.
High-level shader language.
High-level shader language.
I remember that well.
You can get in and hack around with that. I really don't understand shaders. The other nice thing with Unity is there's an asset store where you can just go on. And so if you want a shader that makes something look wet, then you can just go onto the asset store and say wet shader, and somebody will have made one for you, and then it's drag and drop to bring that on and do stuff. But yeah, you can go as low level as you want and write your own shaders and do that sort of thing. But you can also achieve an enormous amount. I have no artistic talent at all, so I buy 3D assets.
Most coders don't, to be honest.
I know. My son's getting really good with Blender, so I'm going to have him start building me the assets that I want for my games.
You've got it all set up so your wife can help you with your books. You've got your son that can do the artwork. It's fantastic.
It's awesome. And Willow has done talks on Unity, so she's learning Unity, and I'm working with her on stuff.
I know, yeah. I remember you said when you were at that .NET Oxford talk, we were chatting in the pub session afterwards, so there was a few of the members there as well, and you were saying that at some point, getting her to do a talk on it, she's welcome anytime at .NET Oxford or the podcast to talk about Unity.
Yeah, right at the moment, we're trying to get her to focus on her, so she's just about to do her GCSE year, and so revision and all that sort of stuff, she's having to focus in and be sensible. But once they've got through that, then yeah, they'd really like to do some more talks and stuff. Kind of got this vague notion of getting her up to a point where by the time she gets to university, she can be working part-time as a Unity advocate. and making a bit of money or something. But yeah, no, I'm very lucky. Both my kids are sort of hugely into the tech. I'm building a game with my son, who is 10. We're remaking Club Penguin because he misses Club Penguin. But he's starting to kind of come up with original ideas that we're looking at building. And Willow is doing her thing, and she's following along with my streams now, but building websites and getting into ASP.NET Core. My company's called Rendle Labs, and technically that means that all four of us could be doing things under that umbrella. What I'd really like is in sort of 10 years' time, when both the kids have finished university, to just have my own game studio. Ben doing graphics, me and Willow doing coding, and Miranda doing the marketing and writing the copy and all that sort of thing.
Rendle Labs is the perfect name for it as well. That just sounds like a games company, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, that's the plan.
Episode 4. Do you know Pete Gallagher? I'm assuming you do.
Yep.
He came on and we're talking about teaching kids to code. And we're talking about like Scratch and all this kind of stuff and all the great stuff there is out there to actually like get involved with your kids. I've done a bit of Scratch with my eldest. My kids I've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, so 2 boys. And I've done a bit of Scratch with my 7-year-old, but nothing with my youngest. But he's old enough now.
The one thing I really recommend to people who've got kids who are using Scratch is Microsoft MakeCode, which is a Scratch-style programming environment, but they have MakeCode Arcade, which is specifically designed for making games, simple games, with kind of 16 by 16 sprites and backgrounds and tiles and all that sort of thing. But that's great because they can create a program using drag and drop blocks just like Scratch, but then at any point you can click a button at the top and it switches over to JavaScript, and it's the JavaScript representation, so they can see how that turns into actual code. So yeah, if they are struggling with Scratch and want to make more game type things, then MakeCode Arcade is really brilliant. My son uses that when he's got an idea for a game that he wants to make. He kind of throws it together in that, and then we can kind of go, right, so let's see how we might do that in Unity.
Yeah, that is cool. I'm just looking at the show notes from Pete Gallagher's episode, and we were talking about this, obviously, Scratch. You've mentioned MakeCode, so we're talking about that and MakeCode Arcade. Tinkercad is quite a good one.
Yes. Yeah.
Microbit, so I've got a microbit. I've got a couple of microbits now, so I've been doing that with Jack, my eldest.
I love these cheap boards, Raspberry Pis, and Tinker boards, and you can get things that look like a circuit board with a little screen and a couple of buttons on them, and you can actually download your game from MakeCode Arcade directly onto the device, and then my son's taken it to school with a battery so he can show his friends the game he's made. And they only cost like 10, 15 quid for these things. They're brilliant. I've got, there are drawers which have got computers more powerful than the thing that put men on the moon. and I just don't know it's in there. I've lost more computing power than existed in the world before 1960. It's just down the back of a sofa.
I find it scary how technology is advancing. I think like my watch is probably more powerful than if you go back to the older machines. It's kind of scary, isn't it? But then if you think how, I know we're going completely off a tangent from streaming now, but if you think how small a period of time that technology has suddenly exploded, like this past 20 years or whatever. Yeah. What's it going to be like in 1,000 years? And if you think like 1,000 years isn't that long, the length of the universe, 1,000 years is nothing. But imagine what technology is going to be like in 1,000 years, as long as we haven't like destroyed ourselves before then.
Yes, and let's be positive and say we're not going to. I was watching a documentary the other day on like Discovery or something. So the Homo sapiens, the sort of species that we are, appeared 300,000 years ago. We invented agriculture about 10,000 years ago and started domesticating animals. 1,000 years ago, we were in the Dark Ages, and people were still living in mud shacks, and there were castles, but technology was very primitive. 150 years ago, we had the Industrial Revolution. 70 years ago, we invented computers. And so in the last 70 years, now we've got robots and drones and iPods and iPhones and nanotechnology and all this sort of stuff. And it's accelerating unbelievably. And what it all comes down to, the thing that has accelerated that at every step has been communication and, inventing writing so that knowledge could pass from generation to generation and so forth. And yeah, the internet has just massively accelerated everything. Just having GitHub and Stack Overflow has created programmers, and it means that you can collaborate with people all over the world and so on. So yeah, it's terrifying. I find myself saying to Mike, well, when I was your age, we only had 3 television channels, and if you missed something, that was it. You'd missed it. We didn't have iPlayer or Netflix, and they can't imagine a world without Wi-Fi. Whereas I remember a world without networks.
You know what I find more scary than any of this? When I find myself saying to my kids, when I was your age, and I'm thinking, oh no, I've become my dad.
Yes. I remember my parents saying, we used to make our own entertainment, and now I say the exact same thing to my kids. And, when I say to make your own entertainment, what they're thinking is start a YouTube channel. And I'm kind of like, no, I was thinking more like hoops and sticks, but whatever. But yeah, it is just accelerating out of all recognizable stuff. So yeah.
I just feel sad in 100 years' time, what's it going to be 1,000 years' time, but we just won't see it.
No, we won't. Our kids might. Anti-aging things and nanomedicine and cell repair and all this sort of stuff. I think people are going to start living a lot longer.
I think they are, but what's going to be the fallout from that? Like, as in, population is already getting bigger and bigger. If people stop dying, what's going to happen?
We're going to be able to fix a lot of that with sort of engineering crops and getting better at eating insects and that sort of stuff. My major ambition in terms of longevity is I want to live long enough to see people land on Mars. Elon is aiming to have a self-sustaining colony on Mars by 2050. In 2050, I will be 87 years old. I figure I can make it that long. That's what I want to see. And then I can die happy. That took a turn.
On Mars.
Yes.
Right, so we should probably wheel this back in again and get back to streaming.
Yes, let's wheel it back round.
So you were saying before that you like to write cool, awesome things. And I noticed, and I remember you saying this in Twitter at some point, but I noticed at the start of your streams, I think you're using Patrick Svensson's Spectre Console tool, I think.
Oh, yes.
So when it starts up your stream, you've kind of got this bunch of progress bars as it's almost your streams booting up and going through, I can't remember what the different things were. But
learning C#, making coffee, reading Twitter. There's stuff on there. People have these huge, elaborate things that they've made in After Effects, or you get them from Stream Elements and places like that, so that you go live with your stream 5 minutes before you actually start streaming, so that people can kind of join and be ready and so on. And I'm very self-conscious, and I didn't want to have like a big flashy thing that made it look all super, because then it was just going to be me and code on the screen and so forth. And so I thought, hey, I'll make a thing in C# that goes at the start of the stream. So yeah, that's open source, and it's on GitHub. I think it's called Stream Intro on my personal GitHub.
I'll include a link to that in the show notes.
Yes, I'll send you the link so you can put it in the show notes. But yeah, that was just a fun thing to write, and I wanted to muck about because Patrick had just kind of released Spectre Console, and I thought that looks good. And it was really easy to throw together, actually. And it's just, it's a fun way to start the stream, and it seriously manages people's expectations of what's going to happen. So yeah.
It's a really, really nice idea. And his library is so cool.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I had him on episode 14 talking about it. And he was going to be doing a 30-minute talk at .NET Oxford this coming Tuesday. But unfortunately, he had to pull out yesterday. So what I'm thinking about doing is taking his place. I played around with it before we did the podcast episode. And it's, as you say, it's so super easy to use.
Yeah.
So I might just, rather than just having to find another speaker and talk at such short notice, I might take his place and just almost do what you do and just not prep for it at all.
Yes.
And just jump in and let's play around with it together.
Yeah. No, I think that's a brilliant idea. Sort of thing, when you're doing stuff online, I think that works a lot better. It's yeah, if you're in person, people kind of expect you to be more prepared, but online makes everything a little bit less formal. But yeah, no, it's a great library, and I made very sure that when the countdown thing finishes, it displays a line saying this was made using Spectre Console, and has the link so that people can go off and investigate it if they like the look of it.
Very cool. I realised before we mentioned OBS and we started talking about it, we didn't even say what it stands for or what it is, because I think that's the most popular tool that people use for streaming nowadays, isn't it?
It is. I think, I mean, without OBS, I'm not sure there would be streaming, but it's Open Broadcast Studio, and you can use it. You can use it to record screencasts as well as live streaming. But yes, it's a big, complicated GPL licensed thing that allows you to mix multiple audio sources and visual sources, and you can overlay lots of things, and it muxes them all together and then sends them out to the stream. And you've got OBS Studio, which is the original, and then there's Streamlabs OBS, which I've just switched to using. And the reason for that is that with Streamlabs, you can record a subset of the sources. So when I'm streaming, I have Stream Badger running, and Stream Badger integrates with the Twitch chat.
So I can't stop myself from laughing at Stream Badger. That's brilliant.
I love it. It's the logo. Once I sort of actually start branding it and stuff, the logo is going to be a honey badger, because that's my spirit animal. But yeah, whilst I'm streaming, people can type things in the chat that trigger the images and sounds happening on the stream, it's pretty cool. But then when you're sort of going to put the thing on YouTube and edit it a bit, you don't necessarily want those popping up when it's not live. And so Streamlabs OBS lets you record the screen and yourself, but not the Stream Badger overlay. And it's essentially the same. It's just been polished up to look a lot nicer, and it's still free. And I think they contribute back to the upstream OBS Studio when they make changes. But yeah, OBS, it's great. You know, streaming, there's no big thing with it. I know people have kind of expensive lighting setups, and they have SLR, DSLR cameras with HDMI output, and they're piping that through their computer. And so you can spend a lot of money. But equally well, I just use my webcam, and sometimes I use this headset mic that I'm using now. I do have a Lavalier microphone, but that cost 50 quid, including the audio processor to connect it to the computer's USB. You download OBS for free, you create a Twitch account, you link the two things together, and you press the start streaming button, and that's it, you're off. There really is no barrier to entry. You can do it from a laptop, you can do it from a MacBook, or whatever. And I strongly encourage people to do it, and go on there and use it as an opportunity to learn something new, to do something that's outside your comfort zone.
Do you have all the gadgets like a green screen, a stream deck, and all this kind of thing?
I did invest in a stream deck after a while. It's not that expensive, and it's incredibly useful. But actually, my justification for doing it was I wanted to make Stream Badger work with a Stream Deck, which I have successfully done. So I've got buttons on my Stream Deck that trigger the images flying over, which is done by the Stream Deck software. One of the actions is send a GET request to a web page. And so it just sends a GET request to the Stream Badger server, which then triggers the image appearing. But that's a fun little thing.
I actually invested in one a few episodes. I can't remember which episode it was. I had James World doing a talk about, and the main topic was about learning, but we just had a catch-up chat afterwards, and he said, guess what, I've just got this new toy, and he showed me a Stream Deck, and so he showed me how it works and everything, so I thought, I fancy one of those, so I ended up getting one. Whilst I don't do streaming, for things like, I do a lot of Teams meetings, for example, and being able to mute it or share my screen via a button, and I've got various things for opening just commonly used tools. I've got one for locking my screen. It's so flexible.
It is. It's completely brilliant. They've just released Mark II, which has got various improvements, like a detachable USB cable and things. But no, lots of uses well beyond streaming.
I've got quite a few auto hotkey scripts.
Yes.
Which sometimes you want to make sure something's got focus before keyboard combination has been pressed, and then the focus go back to what you were on before. and just being able to press a button and that behind the scenes just runs an auto hotkey script.
Yes. I know you can hook it up to, if you have power toys with the fancy zones or whatever they call them.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that. Right, that's my afternoon gone.
There is some way. I don't know how to do it, but I know somebody who's done it, and so they have their fancy zones layouts, because there are just hotkeys that you can assign to them, and then you can trigger the hotkeys from the Stream Deck. So that is something you can do. But that's the biggest purchase I've done in terms of investing in streaming. I didn't get that until I started working on Stream Badger. So all the time I was doing Cocoon, it was just using the OBS Studio interface.
Very cool. So they say in programming that naming things is hard. What are we going to call this episode? Because we've talked about streaming, we've talked about Blazor, we've talked about .NET, we've talked about Unity. So we're going to have to think of a good name.
Stream of Consciousness.
Stream of Consciousness with Mark Rendle.
Yes.
Or Mark Rendle's Stream of Consciousness.
Yeah, that's a good title. Yes.
I like it. So we probably are running out of time because I'm sure you've got lots of work to do. But before we wrap up, shall we do dev tips?
Dev tips, yes.
Dev tips.
So I'm allowed to specify anything at all.
It doesn't have to be dev related. It can be anything you want, to be honest. I should rename it from dev tips to just stuff.
I've started doing something recently as a kind of deliberate practice before I start coding. I got Headspace, which is a guided meditation app, and I've started doing a 10-minute guided meditation. And it's not, a lot of people think meditation is sitting cross-legged on the floor and going om or whatever, but I just sit at my computer and I've got Headspace pinned to my taskbar. And I'm finding that really useful to kind of spend 10 minutes just calming down and chilling out before I start coding. And it's what I've found from doing that is I seem to get into flow state a lot more quickly after doing that. If I sit down and I've got a conversation I just had with my wife and things that are going on and all this sort of stuff. So yes, my kind of dev tip would be, don't necessarily use Headspace. There's Calm, there's all sorts of guided meditation things out there. I think you can find guided meditations on YouTube, but I'm finding that really useful. And I would suggest that other people might find that useful as well. So give that a try.
That's really cool. Do you actually ever do that, like listen to it whilst actually coding, so carry it on into your coding?
No. If I listen to anything when I'm coding, it has to be music without vocals. So I use, there's a Canadian noise band whose name is Rude Word Buttons. F buttons. But yeah, that kind of, so no vocals. Anything with vocals distracts me. So trance style music, noise music, that sort of thing. But no, when I'm doing the sort of meditations, I sit with my eyes closed and that's all I'm doing for that 10 minutes. And it's great. It gets you into a really nice headspace.
Nice.
And I'm not being sponsored by them and I'm not making any money from recommending them, but yeah.
I remember there's another app called Brain FM.
I haven't heard of that one.
It's designed, it's music, but it's very like you're describing. So there's no vocals or anything, but they've designed it to actually get you in that flow state.
Okay. I've just, yes, music to improve focus, meditation and sleep.
It's not a free one, but there's a free trial which you can play around with. And
try 5 free sessions. Oh, yeah, I'm going to have a look at that.
I used to find this really good, obviously when coding, but also I could often just go on like daily walks. I just enjoy my walks with my headphones on. And sometimes I'm listening to podcasts or audiobooks, but sometimes it's nice to just put something like this on and just let my mind wander.
Yeah.
And I've found that if I'm listening to just music, that my mind wanders, it does. But when I'm listening to something like this Brain FM, there's something much more. My mind wanders in a different way, if that makes sense. I don't know how to describe it. I seem to think a lot deeper.
Yeah, I'm going to give that a go. That looks interesting. Cheers.
No worries. So my dev tip, and this isn't really a dev tip, as a lot of developers we use like calculators, but what I use instead of the Windows calculator is a Windows app called SpecQ, so SPEQ. Sadly, it's Windows only, but think of this as kind of an editor type of user interface, like think of Notepad, but a REPL for mathematics. So you can type in equations or formulas and it'll show the output in line. You can then go back and edit them, but you can also assign variables and even render graphs. But it's super lightweight and it's so much more nicer and powerful than a normal calculator. So I don't think I've opened the Windows calculator in years. Again, sadly, it is Windows only, so apologies to listeners who are Mac users, but I will pop a link to that in the show notes.
I'm just looking at the system requirements for it. It runs on Windows 95.
Yeah, it's quite old, but it's just so lightweight, and it's kind of it opens in like a fraction of a second, and it's like Notepad, but as you're typing in, and you can type in different equations. I find with a calculator, you type it, and then you want to like edit your previous calculation or something, and it's not a nice UX. But in this, it's just a REPL.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to check that out as well.
Cool. So before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to mention? I know we've covered like everything under the sun, including like the lifetime of the universe, and literally, I think we did.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, be awesome if people stop by the stream. The lunchtime ones are at 12:30 Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, starting Monday next week. So by the time this goes out, it should be a regular thing. The lessons, which are suitable for ages 10 and up, let's say, are at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays on twitch.tv/Mark Rendle. And yeah, be awesome if people stop by.
Awesome. So obviously we'll include links to everything in the show notes, including how to get in touch with you. Is Twitter the best place to...
Yes, tweet at me.
Tweet at you.
That's definitely the best way to get my attention, is to tweet at me. Check my Twitter mentions about 10 times more than I check my email.
Fair enough. Cool. So a massive thank you, Mark, for joining us. It's been amazing having you on.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you everyone for listening. A quick reminder that this podcast is sponsored by Everstack, which is my own company providing software development and consultation services. For more information, visit everstack.com. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please do help me spread the word. I normally use the hashtag unhandledexception, and I can be found on Twitter at Dracan, which is DRACAN, and my DMs are open. And my blog, danclark.com, has links to all my social stuff too. And we will include links to all the things we've mentioned today in the show notes, which can be found on unhandledexceptionpodcast.com.